we get to it. I have another meeting at 10, so we're going to wrap up maybe about 5 minutes before 10 if we need to. That'd be great. All right. Just a couple things. So hopefully you saw the schedule for today. I'd like to sort of go back to last week's conversation, which I thought was just great. And I'll take minutes again, like I did last week, and I'll send them out. And you saw the kind of themes and issues. And hopefully today we can finish that part, sort of the ideal scenario. And then next week we'll come back. And as I said, I think if we go through the current strategies, goals, and objectives in the comp plan, keep what we want, then we'll move forward from there. Okay, so we'll see. Who is on the phone? Your name doesn't come up. The 864-650-4310. Who is that?
It's Tanya Hyatt.
Okay, good, Tanya. I wasn't sure if it was you or just someone interloping.
No,
right.
I shot you an email. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks. All right. So back to last week. I thought we would start by, and we have some of these, the ideal, given limitations of what the ideal transportation system would be for 123. And I know we've already had some discussions about that. I know we're limited, but I thought we could do 123, then 93, then sort of the non-automotive transportation, and then maybe transportation nodes for today. Anyway, so let's do the same convention as last week. If we'll go with a raise your hand when you want to talk. Tanya, you can just whenever you want to talk. I don't know if you have the capability of hand raising. And just take a minute or two. So what would you like 123 to look like in an ideal world? And I'm just going to take notes like last week and leave it at that. Yeah, Ensley.
Since everybody else is being quiet, I'd like to see a bypass around Clemson, and I know it's going to be a long time. They say it takes, from the time they start till the time they finish, it takes 10 years to do a major bypass. And I think that in the long run, we need to have 123 in the city of Clemson to be primarily city of Clemson traffic, because the traffic is so heavy now. In 10 to 15 years, and it may take 5 years to get the bypass started. In that amount of time, the traffic would be much worse than it is now if something isn't done.
Okay, so the bypass idea. Brad, your hand went up first, and then Shannon.
Hey, yes. Good morning, everybody. Just to kind of reiterate what I mentioned about a month ago, right in, right out access along Restaurant Road that parallels the railroad, and then we really need to push hard to get some type of a back passage behind the Verizon down to the SunTrust, whether it's pedestrian or just bicyclist pathway, or if it's a combination of both with a little one-way road to kind of help funnel some of the drive-through traffic, the left turn traffic, down to the signal, and use more of a unified signal, more controlled measures for the left turn traffic to kind of minimize our traffic accidents, to kind of appease the DOT, because they are going to be pushing within the next couple of years to extend that raised median all the way down 123. And then that's really going to screw up a lot of the restaurant access, where you can't take a left turn. You have to go down and do a U-turn. So we really need to see who is still for it and who's against it. I know the railroad did give that 25-foot easement or right away. And I know this was kind of started back in 2018, and it's kind of come to a halt, but really need to try to pursue that if all possible here with this meeting, kind of talk about it, and then kind of push it on through to ClemsonNext, or even just bypass ClemsonNext and go on through to city staff to see if we can't restart that little back passage road behind the Verizon.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Shannon, your hand was up?
I'd like to see wider sidewalks. I'd like to see a buffer between the street and the sidewalks so people felt safe walking on those sidewalks, no matter how much traffic was there. I think with the density of student housing that's coming, or just housing in general that's coming, there's going to be people that are there that need to get places that are not going to get on the bypass. I think that bypass, the money for the bypass would be better spent helping Clemson residents navigate within Clemson. The back, what Brad was just talking about, having some sort of back way into restaurants on that restaurant row. I think also expanding sidewalk access and having some sort of parking, public parking where you could park and then walk that restaurant row would also help those businesses. I mean, the bypass is also not going to help our local businesses at all. But making it safe, making people feel safer walking that might help alleviate some traffic in the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay, that's the first time I've heard the suggestion about a parking area so that you can walk on Restaurant Row. I like that. I had not heard that before. Renee, was your hand up?
Yes, I wanted to say, I think it would be a good thing to get on that median all the way down because of the amount of accidents there and how treacherous it makes driving there. And that might not be a popular thing with the restaurants to not have that ability to have those left turns, but based on the traffic data, I mean, I think that's something that we should push, as well as the larger sidewalks and then a safe spot for people to cross that street. So if you did park somewhere, and I would love that if you could park somewhere and walk to the restaurant of your choice, but you're going to need to be able to get across that street, and that's a frightening prospect.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Abigail?
Hey,
Hey.
I'm Abigail.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm sorry I missed the other meetings. I just wanted to kind of introduce myself and then add to the conversation. My name is Abigail Dowd. Right now I'm a stay-at-home mom, but I am a teacher as well. And I wanted to be part of this committee because I've been a Clemson student. I've been an employee, a business person in Clemson, and now I'm a mom. And so the traffic is a big concern. And kind of going off of what y'all were saying with 123, I would love to walk from my house down to the restaurant with a stroller, and be able to somehow, get Chick-fil-A or whatever, and then walk to Waterfront Park. And it's not that far. So if we could have a way, I love maybe not parking garage, but a parking area where you can walk to, and then go take your lunch and go to Waterfront Park. And I know John Fulmer, who just got elected, he wants to make that an art district kind of idea. So if we could kind of combine these two ideas and making 123 more pedestrian friendly, I think more of the students would walk rather than drive if we made it accessible from 123 down to Clemson University and it was safe to cross the roads. The median going all the way down and then you'd have to make a U-turn to come back. To me, that seems really dangerous just because most people aren't very good with U-turns in general. I think that would actually increase accidents and people will be in a rush. And so, that U-turn idea might cause more problems and backup than not having it. That would be my only concern, especially where that U-turn would be, especially like when the sun is setting and y'all know how it gets really crazy with the sun at, dusk. And so I think the median is a okay idea. It's just, we have to think about, is a U-turn the best way to figure out how to come back down 123?
Good suggestions. D, you're next, and then Brad, your hand is still up. Okay. So D, what do you got?
I think we're talking about a mixture of things. I think the left turns and so on in Restaurant Row are near-term things, the route beside the railroad tracks and all that. But ultimately, we can't really stand Walhalla and Seneca using us as the route to Anderson and Greenville. I'm with Emsley about the bypass, but I think it'll be longer than 10 years. I'd say 2040 would be the best we could do. I think we're going to find that there's a fair amount of traffic going to Anderson, and we're going to need a bypass that goes that side of town rather than the other side. The other side is really crammed up with lake inlets and so forth anyway. That will have to go across university land. There is no other way it's possible. And I think that's why we need some really high-level discussions with the university pretty quickly. Glad to hear that the mayor's already talking with the president. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Brad?
Yes, I just want to remind everybody that the DOT owns 123. We've got no jurisdiction over it. That's a U.S. route. It's a major commercial route. And it's going to be very difficult if they say, no, we're going to extend this median all the way down. It's going to be very difficult for us to stop it. And the current median they have now, it kind of blocks the car wash and the Dunkin' Donuts. You only get one car in there. So then you have a domino effect that we didn't even know about it. Clemson didn't even know that they were going to be putting that median in there. They just said, we're going to do it. And that's what I'm getting at is they're going to do this extended median if we don't really get on top in the next couple of years to try to mitigate and try to get, more safe conditions. They're just getting tired of fielding off lawsuits, I think, from some of the insurance companies. So just want to throw that out there too, that we don't have any jurisdiction over 123. It's owned by the DOT.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Shannon and then Gray. Shannon?
I've got a question for Brad. Does their jurisdiction extend to the sidewalks, or are those sidewalks and like further in closer to the businesses, that's city property or city easement?
Typically it extends the sidewalk. I mean, they usually have, I think, 5 to 6 feet off of the shoulder of the road. But with, with it being 123 and where it is, that's a great question, Shannon. Great question. I know with College Ave, they only own to the edge of the road there, going all the way down to the 93 in College Ave at Subway, all the way north to the entirety of 133. But with 123, I'm not sure how far over on the shoulder that they own, but I know it's typically 5 to 6 feet. That'd be a good question for Wayne, or maybe Mr. Feimster knows. He's talked with Christy Hall, secretary, a little bit more than I have.
And Wayne's not with us. Ensley, do you know how far 123 dot extends?
I do not know that. That's something I'll have to do some research on. One of the problems with the U-turns is that people will start U-turning at the traffic light, and that will really be dangerous.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Ensley. Welcome, Gray. We're talking about 123 this morning as our first issue, and I see your hand is up. Welcome back.
Yeah. Hi, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, cool. I just had a quick question, maybe for Greg, perhaps. I think I remember from maybe 2 weeks ago, you were talking about how the businesses on 123 were, really against the median. And that gave me the impression that they had some sort of say in it. But if they don't, and it's totally under the Department of Transportation's purview, then what is stopping DOT from doing it as soon as possible? Because I mean, I'm pro median, to be completely honest. I think the number of traffic accidents is really ridiculous. And people, I don't know, safety comes over, private profitability personally for me, but obviously I don't have a say. It's the Department of Transportation.
So Brad, you're kind of breaking up. I didn't hear that whole question. I think it was the property owners and the restaurant folks, whether they have any say, and I'll let Brad answer that. Was that what it was, Gray, pretty much?
Yeah, it was pretty much that. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, now I can, yep.
Yeah. Sorry. I tried to call in, but I'm on my phone again. Let me know like immediately if you can't hear me. Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
I can hear you now.
Okay. My question was, I was under the impression from 2 weeks ago that the business owners on 123, the fast food chain, had some sort of say in if a median was installed. But if it's SCDOT's decision, um, will they make that decision without any sort of input? If it's just safety dependent, if their considerations are just about safety and reducing the number of traffic accidents, and potentially even reducing like the flow into these restaurants, because I know that during rush hour, Chick-fil-A often has a line in this far right lane heading north, south, west on 123. And that's, you know, a huge problem for traffic flow during rush hour. So my question was for Greg/Brad.
So Brad, I'm guessing property owners don't have any say more than anyone else in that. Is that accurate?
I still, it was breaking up on me. I'm in bad service, I guess.
Okay, well, essentially the
Yeah.
question was whether the property owners along 123, the restaurants, have any input into what happens with that road or not. Okay, so Brad, you're muted now, but all right, well,
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yeah.
Yeah. No, they definitely do have input. I mean, they have ground to stand on because they they own a certain amount of road frontage. So, they definitely need to be heard. Like I said, we're getting into a gray area for me because it's a U.S. commercial route, and typically the FHA and DOT they dictate, and they kind of say, yeah, this is what we're going to do, and that's it. Prime example over in Spartanburg, with all the traffic accidents on the interstate. There's all the deaths. Uh, the work zones there need to be revised to where we're not seeing so many traffic accidents on 185 in Cherokee County. But you too. But that's the DOT says, well, this is what we're doing. We're doing our work at night, and sorry, we'll try to do our best, but they're not going to change how they go about anything with the roads that they on.
All right, so
Sorry, I have a bad connection. I'm not sure if I'm getting across to anybody right now. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
that was, yeah, I got that. That was good, Brad. Before we move on, Tanya, do you have any comments? Anything you want to add for 123?
I'm sorry, I had to take a call during part of that. I do think that we need to look at other cities that have put in a median and see if that actually changes like risk, or because I know how risky it is to take a left out of some of that, like try taking a left out of Chick-fil-A, and you say, well, just don't always take a right, but there are people that try to take a left. And so I think we need to look at that before we assume that U-turns are going to create problems, before we assume that the restaurants will have a decreased business. Maybe if we could look at another town. I know my husband's from Dalton, Georgia. They put in the median. Nobody wanted the median. It actually, I mean, we just now know there's a median. And so when we want to go certain places, we just know how to navigate to get there. So I'm not going to not go to the business that I want to go to just because there's a different path to get there now. The other thing is I really like what Brad said about the back street by the railroad track, some kind of buffer street. Some kind of buffer with the sidewalks, and then being able to park and walk to restaurants would be so valuable for families that have kids that would like to just go for a stroll. I love the idea of crossing 123 to go and I don't even know if that would be possible to go to the park. But everybody pretty much had some really good ideas. So
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Let me see, Gray, and then D. Gray, your hand is up.
Yeah, please let me know if you can't hear me, okay? If I'm breaking up. But so my question again was for Greg. Will the DOT just unilaterally make a decision to put in a median without any input from the business owner on this on 123?
Yes, they will.
Okay,
Sorry, yes.
so there's basically nothing we can say or do. I mean, personally, I am pro median. Like, I don't think people should be making left turns out of all the fast food restaurants. And I know that it's going to be very unpopular for pretty much everyone involved. It'll be less convenient and less profitable, perhaps. Okay, I wish Dr. Sarah Sewell was here because he actually researches business profitability with medians and whatnot. I wish he was here to, talk about that, but I guess we'll probably bring this up next week as well. But I guess that was my question. Like, if we even have any sort of say with the DOT either, I'm just curious, essentially. So thank you.
And again, Gray, you broke up a little bit, so you might do better if you just type in a chat and then I can read that to everybody. That might, for now, just to be safe. And D, we'll go to you, and then we're going to go to Highway 93.
Just have a question. Is it legal with respect to the city or the DOT or the State Highway Patrol for people to line up to get into Chick-fil-A and block a lane of traffic?
That is illegal. They're breaking the law. State law states that you cannot block the lane of travel. And the highway patrol, they're short-staffed at the troop there in Central to be out there to try to enforce that. And it's up to the city. And I already kind of spoke to Chief Dixon about this before he left, and he said, well, I was told to stand down and not to get out there and enforce to keep the traffic moving. So we may want to reapproach that. I mean, I've kind of had a conversation with Mr. Halfacre lately about it. And he told me that they were going to be on top of it and have an officer out there in the peak hour times, starting around 2 or 3 o'clock when students get out of class, and it's kind of a big rush to get lunch or whatnot. I've yet to see that, but you bring up a great point because it's a domino effect, and it does create unsafe conditions too. And even the new Chief Campos has even talked about that as well. But to answer your question, yes, they are breaking the state law. State law states you cannot block a lane of travel.
Thank you.
And D, Chief Campos couldn't be with us today, but I'll send him an email with your question because I think he's addressed that before, and I'll share it with everybody. That's a really good question though. Lisa?
Thanks. I just have a couple, some of these points have been made, so I'll just be really quick, but just for the purposes of sharing my opinions on some of the topic of 123, I share the concerns that the bypass, I'm just not sure it would achieve what we think it might achieve, and it would be hugely expensive, and I'd love to see us put more time and resources towards moving people around the community and our focus on getting local traffic, short trips, get those folks out of cars and walking to these businesses. Some of the ideas that have been mentioned would be great at achieving that. The other thing I'd mention is that I know DOT can be, sometimes they do make decisions probably without as much community input as everyone would want. I do think some communities are successful at working with them on various projects. So I wouldn't discount the fact that we do have a voice as a community. And I'd love for us to be, I'm sure Clemson is already doing this, but actively engaging with whatever DOT rep is over our area to at least ensure that they know what we want on the roads that they oversee. And again, just I'd love for this committee, I think that we are best positioned to focus more time and energy on how to get students and residents around by walking and biking versus so much emphasis for so long has been put on how do we get cars moving faster. And I think there's been a lot of energy already put into that. And I'd love to see us shift gears a little bit and put more energy towards alternative modes of transportation.
Okay, good. And that's actually one of our issues for this morning too. Why don't we, that was great. A couple brand new ideas to me. I like that. Same kind of perspective, 93, which is, as you all told me, the first meeting is very different than 123. What would that look like ideally, do you think? Yeah, Shannon.
I'll go again. I think it looks similar to what I described for 123. You have a buffer between the sidewalks or the walking paths and the road to make it feel safer. I think we need to put some sort of restriction on the number of curb cuts that are going to go in there, because I don't know, my family walks and bikes 93 at least 3 to 4 times a week, and the turn-ins are troublesome, especially at night. Things like better lighting, more, I don't know, something to slow traffic down a little bit, maybe, whether that's just better striping on the roads where people are going to cross, or, there's a lot of people that cross 93 up by Ingalls. I can't remember what that cross street is. Maybe it's at Cambridge, but maybe what are those, the pedestrian light things, but just to make that safer. And then, that whole Clemson crossing, doing something with 123, 93 interchange where it's a pedestrian plaza, or there's pedestrian lights where you can push to cross. And just maybe the road surface is different to indicate to drivers to slow down there. I think are things that would make people feel safer walking and biking.
Okay, that's great. Okay, Lisa?
I think that 93 is a really great opportunity for our group and the land use group to really work together and integrate our plans, because it seems like there's a lot of opportunity for redevelopment on that corridor, and it has a huge opportunity to become what we want it to be. So that's a particular situation where I hope we reach out to the land use committee.
Okay. And 1 or 2 or maybe 3 of the catalyst areas that the ClemsonNext people suggested are actually along 93 in different locations. So that might, depending on how all that goes out. And your point is good about the land use committee. I don't think they've actually met yet as a group. So we'll keep that in mind though. Yeah. All right. More on 93. Those are more good suggestions. Yes, Renee.
I just wanted to agree on putting a buffer and making 93 a little bit more walkable, because that truly is the one place I do see a lot of people walking on that road. I do see a lot of people biking. That does get a lot of traffic, but you are right up against a lot of very fast traffic. And I don't know how you could slow that down. I mean, it is a speedway, but you have 4 lanes. And so lighting, buffering, and the crossing, because you're right, I go to Ingalls a lot coming off Cambridge, and there's a lot of people going back and forth. As we're putting all those new developments in there, we're hoping those people are going to want to walk a lot too. So I think investing in it now so it doesn't end up like 123 would probably be a good idea, and worth our effort.
Yeah. Yeah, I walk on that road sometimes, and the cars are right there. You heard, even the noise bothers me a lot, but it's a very heavily trafficked, busy, noisy area. And it's sort of interesting in that that's one of the areas, that there probably will be more student housing going out towards Central. And even though it's not in Clemson, that's going to be a very direct impact on us. There's a proposal now that is before council for, I think it's 40 acres on Vickery Drive, which is, I think, the last right-hand turn off 93 when you're still in Clemson going towards Central. And that could end up being a fairly large development, although it's being proposed now for a senior citizen living community. But that road's going to affect us beyond the Clemson limits in terms of traffic. Yeah. Other thoughts? Abigail?
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah, I would like to see a good like bike lane there. Because if you think about it, it goes all the way down into the university. And I think like you could go get your groceries at Walmart, and if you had like a nice bike lane that was wide, not just these little narrow bike lanes. I'm thinking of like a bike lane where you could have like, I don't know if I would do this, it's not safe, but like a baby, like one of those carriers on the back of your bike, you know, where it's wide enough and you feel safe enough. Because I think even you could bike from Central to campus. I mean, it's far, but not that far on a bike. And so we made it more bike friendly. And you know, because Clemson University is trying to be more bike friendly. So I'd get students out of their cars and made it kind of decrease some of the traffic. Slowing, sorry, slowing that traffic down, and making it people aware that people are trying to walk or bike would be good. You know, I think there needs to be an awareness that people actually want to walk on it. Sorry.
Very good. I have a chat from Gray. Yeah, it's a good question. Who talks about who told the city to stand down and why? And I said, I will contact Chief Campos and get a little more information on what happened there. And I think he's talked about that before, but all right. Other 93 thoughts. So when you talk about a buffer, Shannon or Lisa or Abigail, you mean like trees or space or what? Tell me what kind of buffer you're talking about.
Fran, if you look at the Green Crescent report, I think there's
Okay.
pictures in there of 93, and there's several examples of buffers. Sometimes it's just 2 to 3 feet of grass. You could have trees or shrubs in there. Sometimes it's those, I can never remember what they're called, Lisa, those pylons that separate the bike lane.
Okay.
But it's really funny, if you drive down Berkeley, you'll realize that part of the sidewalk on Berkeley has that 2 to 3 foot buffer zone between like the upper Berkeley near Walmart has that grass between the sidewalk and the road. And as you get closer to Issaquena, that disappears. And it's a different feel when you walk the whole length of Berkeley, as far as just having a little bit more buffer between you and the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think ideally as much buffer as possible. I mean, if you can have separation by grass or by bollards, but also by trees is even better. I mean, anything that just, I mean, I feel like naturally as humans, when we walk and we're farther separated or there's vertical separation and horizontal, it just makes you feel a bit safer.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. And certainly I would think it's going to be much more likely that we'll have an impact on 93 than 123, just because it's bigger, the city has more say. It's less crowded, lots of it, but anyway, those are really good. So any other 93 thoughts? I like that a lot.
Yeah, I have some thoughts. I'm probably going to be breaking out because apparently I'm not in a good service zone right now. But as student housing spreads along 93 going into Central, I'm just nervous that there's not going to be any sort of like, okay, so let me preface this by saying, am I breaking up or can y'all hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, cool. The culture of Clemson University is kind of changing. I mean, with the national championship wins, Clemson is really on the map as kind of like a party school, but not necessarily just that. It's still like, it's reputable, of course, but the kinds of students coming here are not like working class students from in-state. It's a lot of rich students or whose parents are at least upper middle class and higher, and they have this expectation that they're going to be able to drive a car. So as we have a lot more student housing being built on 93, I just think it's going to have to be kind of like a university culture shift if we really want less cars driving through 93, making 93 more of a bike and pedestrian friendly corridor. And I don't know how to change that, but I just see, because I work with students a lot now, and definitely because I grew up in Clemson as well, and I definitely see the kind of student changing who comes to Clemson. It's a lot of rich Northerners who come down for the good weather and like the great football, and they all drive cars. Period. Like after freshman year, their parents buy them cars, and then they live on their off-campus housing and drive cars. So I don't know. Thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Anyone?
That's a good point. I think if we have time later on, not today, that whole notion of sort of changing the car culture in terms of attitudes and behavior, something we haven't talked much about at all. The white paper really doesn't very much. That might be as important as some of the infrastructure changes. So great, that's good. That's a good add. We may come back at a later meeting and talk about how to do that. Tom, do you have anything to add on 93?
This is Tanya, and I feel like the Green Crescent Trail has done a really good job. This is one of those things where I feel like this has already been done, and there's some really great ideas there. When you look at, I don't know if it was Shannon or Lisa that mentioned, we live right off 93, and you definitely do not feel safe, even though there's a bike lane. And I definitely, if we are on bikes, we do not use the bike lane. So we end up using sidewalks and things that we shouldn't be using. So.
Yeah, good. And it may be, not to jump ahead, that in our final report, maybe one of our major recommendations is that the Green Crescent Trail plans or proposal for 93 become adopted. And that's one of the recommendations that comes from this committee, if that work's already been done. I don't think there's any need for us to do additional work. So if there's a lot of things already in the Green Crescent Trails plan, maybe when we come to our final conclusions, we would just bless that plan and urge, again, I'm sure other groups have, that it be adopted and implemented. So that might be a quicker way, but I'll look at that too. All right, other 93 before we move on to the third thing, which is transportation nodes. D, yes, D.
Again, I think these are great suggestions, but they're long-range things, and I hope we can accomplish them. But on 93, there are some stretches where a bike lane could swing away from traffic. I think about the linear park that the city built just across the Anderson Highway, just past the bank. Maybe there's some others on further out 93 where the bike lane could simply loop into property that the city owns or that an owner would cooperate with. And if you begin doing that, then people will begin to ask, well, why don't we kind of figure out a way to loop the whole thing off 10 feet away or 20 feet away from the traffic? Again, I think some long-range planning would be very useful.
Okay, another really good suggestion. All right, other 93 thoughts? All right, so at the Clemson Next Wednesday meetings, the notion of transportation nodes located throughout the city has been pitched a couple times. So the nodes would be in busy areas, high residential areas. And my understanding is would include a variety of transportation options coming in and out. It's like, I think Wayne said last week, it's much more likely that people will wait on buses than wait for buses. And so the notion of buses being in a central location so people can wait on the bus rather than waiting for the bus to happen to come out, which is more predictable. So I just want to get some input from you, and my guess is some of you know much more about transportation nodes than I do, whether that's a model that would fit for us. So there might be a node on campus, there might be a node out under the 133 bridge, there might be a node somewhere on 123, on 93, different places that would be sort of more centralized transportation locations rather than a bus stop, here and there. So any thoughts on nodes or knowledge about nodes that I don't have that might help? Yeah, Shannon.
I'll jump in. I don't know much about nodes, but what I'm envisioning based on what you said is what we see in cities where you have buses, multiple transportations coming together. So that would include parking, a parking area near the buses, and then probably bike racks, I'm assuming, or some sort of something to encourage biking. It might be somewhere where there's bikes for rent. I'm assuming the university probably has a couple of these with their bike and car share programs. But just to riff for a minute, I would, to me, the natural places for that you might have one in Central. I know they've been talking about doing some sort of parking area near that old laundromat that they're working on. You might have one near Clemson Crossing where the Bilo is, and one out on 123 somewhere that might serve as your parking spot to then walk or bike 123, and then connect those with if there's anything going on campus or with other ones on campus, like off of Perimeter Road, perhaps.
Yeah, I think you're right. In some ways, my understanding is it's a way to almost siphon off traffic into separate areas rather than all the traffic going in the same place at the same time to the same area. I don't know, we're not that big a city, but like the idea of somewhere to park your car and get on a bus or get on a bike or a bike share, so that's where the traffic will head, and then it would be compressed and then come into the city or to downtown from there, as opposed to everybody coming to the same place at the same time. So other thoughts on nodes? Yeah, Tanya.
Yes, this is Tanya. Yeah. So I know we're talking, some of my examples are bigger cities, but like in Charleston, there's a parking lot at a visitor center. At that visitor center, you can get on a bus to go on a tour, but in Clemson, it might be at that visitor center or at that parking lot. You might learn a little bit about Clemson, but then you could rent a bike, or, there could be bike taxis, or, I don't exactly know what we want to open this up to, but it could be a central location where if you want to have a Tiger Town tour and a private company wants to do those tours on, certain busy weekends, and parents can jump on that bus and I don't really know, but there could be an opportunity if there's some type of hub that you can, it may be an opportunity even for a private business to be a part of that, if that makes sense, not just like not just city transportation, but it could be something where, somebody that owns a bike taxi might want to be a part of that or something.
Yeah. I like that. Okay. Other thoughts? This idea, actually, I think David Allison brought this up, was the first time I heard from it about it. So we may have him come talk more. I like the idea. I like the idea that it's dispersing traffic. I like the idea that a lot of it's non-automotive leaving from that hub, or at least not personal cars. So other quick thoughts on nodes, or the idea of nodes worth at least pursuing, not appropriate for a city like this one? Lisa?
Just a quick thought that where I like the idea as well, but obviously there needs to be a connection from the node to wherever someone wants to go, like a safe path, bikeway or walking way, or transit. The bus being there is a great idea. So I would just say, if we go this route, being really strategic and thoughtful with putting the node and investing in infrastructure, connecting the node to wherever anybody wants to go. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if bikes are available for rent or you can walk from here. If it's not safe to do so, people just will not do it. So.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. All right, yeah, Bill.
Just a quick thought, having these hubs or nodes, it's going to be you got to buy land. You got to have land to do that on, and that's going to be a cost. And because people are going to want to invest their land, if they own it, to use it they want to get the most out of it they can. Buses going up and down 93 from all the apartments that are coming up on 93. I know the red route does go through 93, and it runs approximately every 15 to 20 minutes. A bus comes by, maybe a little later. I actually have never used it, so I don't know exactly when it runs. But if we can have a bus system that just ran up and down 93 from these apartments to the university or to downtown, or to the, to 123, rather than making the big route all over the place, it might help with some of the students. I know that new that new road, that new development is right on my corner there, just about. It's called Cambridge Creek. Those students, they're not going to walk from there to the university. They're just not going to. I mean, they're going to get in their cars and drive unless there's a bus. Now, hopefully these developments would have their own buses. That would be an idea to get people back and forth. But then they're going to have at least 2 buses running because the students got to get there on time for their classes and all. So if we could get buses, I just don't see, if I was a student that lived in Cambridge Creek, there's no way I'm going to walk all the way from Cambridge Creek all the way to the university. And I'm sorry, I'm just not going to do it. And down 93, I'm going to get my car and drive there as long as the university provides a place for me to park,
Right.
which in the past they do. And they provide buses from those parking lots into the university. So I don't know what the answer is. I'm being realistic. I'm sorry. About going up and down 93. Those students nowadays, like Greg said a while back, students nowadays they're not going to walk and ride. It's just not, we're going to have to make it where it's easier for them to do that. And the buses are the only way it's going to work, I think. I don't know. I may be completely wrong. Maybe the kids will want to walk, but nowadays kids are not going to walk. That's almost getting close to 1.5 2 miles from Cambridge Creek into the university.
Yeah.
That's a fur clip to walk, especially if you have inclement weather at all. That's my piece. Sorry.
Yeah, so yeah, that's a good point. I'm gonna have to get off in a couple minutes. Brad, you may know this, if someone online. I'm the host of this meeting. Brad, you're the co-host. If I log off, will the meeting continue if Brad stays on as co-host? Does anyone know?
I think you might
I think
have
it will.
to
I
transfer
think
the
it
host
will
to someone
continue.
Okay. So if I have to get off, hopefully Brad will stay on, but if I get off and you all disappear, we'll meet again like next week. Let me just say for next week, if you could do this, I sent you as an attachment yesterday, and it's also in our drive, the list of strategies and goals that were in the comprehensive plan. And my thought was at some point we could go individually through that whole list and indicate the items that we think are essential to accomplish what we're discussing today, all right? And last week. So if you could just before next week, don't do the process, just look at the list and think about whether that's an efficient and effective way to go into action, all right? So don't worry about completing anything. Won't even be 2 or 3 minutes. Just look and get a sense of what's on there. And if that would fit kind of a process that lets us come up with specifics, okay? And we'll talk more about that next week, and we'll pick up with this. But anyway, someone else had you had a hand up, and I think Gray has a hand up. And then I will duck out. Brad, if you could hang out for a while as co-host, if it lets you do that, right? So D, do you?
Just a quick comment. Both of my children went to schools that did not allow them to have a car on campus and wouldn't provide parking for it. And they did fine.
Yeah.
These were top-rated schools. I don't see why Clemson, we have to have the cooperation of the university on this.
Yeah.
But this is Tanya. The problem with that is we do not have the infrastructure to support students biking and walking to campus. So we're spinning our wheels if we want them to change the culture when we don't have the infrastructure. Nobody's going to go. And it seems so silly, even when we were talking about the hubs, for Shannon or Lisa to speak up to say, you can rent bikes, but if you don't have a bike path, people aren't going to ride the bike. And I'm thinking, well, that's a given, but that's what we're doing right now. We're just kind of talking in circles, because if we don't have the infrastructure, the kids, I'm not going to ride a bus. I'm just not. As a student, I wasn't going to ride a bus, but I would walk and I would ride a bike. and I rode that downtown Charleston, and it wasn't the safest place, but I'm going to do that before I'm going to get on a bus. So there's just some students that aren't going to ride a bus, but if we can get the walking and the biking, that's something that I feel like we can manage, and that's a goal that we can actually accomplish. But like sometimes when we're saying we need a bypass, that's why nothing's been done, because we keep talking about things that we cannot control. And I probably didn't make any friends with that comment, but that's just how I feel.
I agree with you, but I'm just saying we need the university's cooperation on these matters.
Yeah.
And you're right, we do.
I think, yeah, Tanya, I
May I
agree. I
make a
think we
comment?
need, when we submit our report, I think there has to be some sense of sequencing and priorities and what's realistic in there. Otherwise, nothing will happen. Gray, very quickly, and then Shannon.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have the name of the person, of the woman who just talked. Who was that?
That was Tanya.
It's Tanya Hyatt.
Okay, hi Tanya. I'm just curious, why do you think students won't take the bus? Because cat bus is relatively popular. I mean, especially before COVID, I used to see very full buses along
Yes.
93.
No, I do believe they take buses. I'm just saying there are some students that will prefer to walk or ride a bike. But yes, there's a need for the cat buses. I agree with that. But I just think there are people that will walk and bike.
Okay.
We're a
thanks for
rural university. I mean, people come here because of all the outdoor activities they have to offer. They're walking, hiking, they're doing things on the weekend. And I just know that there's.
Go ahead.
I really don't have anything else to say.
Okay. Well, I think that people still own cars, even if they do take cat bus to campus, you know? They're probably still gonna have a car at house, but they're still gonna take the bus just to class.
Yeah. And Lisa just posted too that she thinks people are driven to mode shift when it becomes harder to drive or park your car. I think, these are a lot of complex pieces and no one solves it all. I think people, are going to do the behaviors many times, that the easiest possible behavior to do is what people select, I think. And so we have to figure that out. Brad, your hand was up and I am going to duck off. So again, Shannon, I'm sorry, Shannon, you were first and then Brad. Shannon.
I just have a real quick, I agree with Tanya and Lisa. I think you have to build it first before the culture change happens. Because if it's not safe, it's very hard to get people to shift their priorities and how they get around. So I agree with what they said about the nodes and what Tanya said about prioritizing what we invest in first. I want to throw out one other thing. We focused on the main arteries. As far as quality of life for the residents here, Berkeley Drive is a big residential artery. And the traffic on Berkeley Drive is so fast. My kids bike and walk that by themselves, and I want to give them that freedom. But it makes me a little nervous and sick to my stomach sometimes when I'm walking and somebody cruises by me at 45. If we could throw in here some sort of consideration on how to reduce speed on some of these local arteries. I'm not an expert. I don't know if that's just reducing speed and having a police officer out there to write tickets. I don't know if it's speed bumps, which everyone hates and the residents would hate as well, or if it's an education campaign. But I think doing something to try and lower the speed, at least on Berkeley, would do something to help the quality of life of the residents of that part of town.
All right, so that's good. Let me do this. One of the items we're going to discuss today, the non-automotive transportation options, and I think we'll add then the other arteries in town will be where we'll start next week on our ideal transportation or our ideal TTT system. So I'll add that, Shannon, and we'll pick up the non-automotive, which is probably gonna be a lot of Green Crescent Trail. But please do try to look at least the thing I'd sent you and get a notion of that would help us, because if we don't list something, it's not going to be considered at all. Even if we say it on our meeting, we have to actually move that idea forward. So I want to make sure there's a mechanism to get all of our ideas with some sense of sequencing or priority. So I think the way to do that might be going through the comp plan and then adding the things we talked about last week, this week, and next week. But just if you can look at it, and just a quick note to Brad or to me saying if that's a good way or one of different ways to do it, all right? Because I think next week we need to start moving on the so what and how we're going to do it question, right? But anyway, thank you very much.
you
It was really
talking-
productive. What, say it again?
Are you talking about the 6-page or 7-page document you sent us? Is that what you're talking
Yeah, it was
about?
a whole list of the goals and objectives from because the comp plan has like 130 or whatever. So yes, and eventually I thought would go through individually and what of those are essential. And you'll see, by the way, lots of the things we mentioned this week and last week are on that list. But the problem is that list has so many things on it that it's paralyzing. So yeah, that's what it is, Tanya. Okay. All right, I'm going to try to get off and hopefully you all can stay on. And Brad, I'm going to hand the baton to you. Thank you
Okay.
all. Great meeting again.
All right, thank you, Fran. All right, everyone. So I've got an update on the 123. Just heard back from the engineer that any enhancements that we do on 123 or any state-owned road